Welcome to Trek.trav. I am Trav. Today we're talking about multiverses, sequels and prequels. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe. We're going to talk about all of the different things going on in the Star Trek franchise, maybe even some other franchises. So the great thing about Star Trek and about a lot of shows now is that they are exploring other avenues for their shows. And in a weird way, exploring different sequels and prequels and all of that, trying to delve into different areas of the universe. Now, other shows have done this in the past. Even Star Trek has done this in the past. Doctor Who had multiverses, but they sort of stayed away from them. Weirdly, the one thing Doctor Who hasn't done much of in the last 17 years of the new show is multiverse stuff. I think one episode or two. Star Trek, on the other hand, after the cancellation of Star Trek Enterprise, pretty hard switched into a multiverse sort of atmosphere. But before that, in the original Star Trek TOS, the original series, Captain Kirk and his crew travel to the Mirror Universe, our first introduction to the Mirror Universe, which everyone is evil, some people have goatees. It's often referenced in TV shows about how many people have goatees, and they're just evil because they have goatees, short-sleeved, showing the midriff if they're a lady. And it's a really fun episode where the Kirk from the universe, they pretty much figure out he's crazy. Kirk from our universe. It's just an interesting play on a what-if scenario. And that's pretty much all it was in TOS. It was a what-if scenario to have a little bit of fun, see the characters in a different light. Then we move to the Next Generation, and we didn't get a mirror episode in the Next Generation, but it doesn't mean that multiverses weren't in this show. Future Imperfect, we had episodes where they would play with time, where they would move time. We had snippets of these alternate realities where one reality is the Enterprise is being destroyed by the Borg. Their universe is being destroyed by the Borg. Another universe where Picard's died. They sort of touched on these different multiverses, but never explored them to any great level. Other than sometimes someone would change the timeline and they would go into that. The last episode of All Good Things is kind of a multiverse story, but not, because Q's involved. Then we go to Deep Space Nine, where we're reintroduced to the Mirror Universe, where the universe has changed a lot. Terrans, or humans, are being tortured, just killed by the Empire. And there's a couple of episodes where we see our characters playing badass versions, weirdly bisexual badass versions. And it's just really fun. There's countless episodes in Deep Space Nine that follow that. Voyager had a little run-in with some mirror-ish type episodes, but really stayed away from it. Enterprise, once again, we got 2 standalone episodes in season 4 where they go to the Mirror Universe, but our crew doesn't meet the Mirror Universe. This is essentially the entire 2 episodes in A Mirror Darkly are set up as their own show. What if you were watching Star Trek Enterprise in the Mirror Universe? Now, as a franchise, Star Trek, until Star Trek Enterprise, hadn't done prequels, hadn't done before what we were used to. So what we got was Star Trek Enterprise coming in, and the studio didn't like the idea of a prequel. The Star Wars prequels had come out. This had made them a little bit weary about going back too far, about changing things too much. So the studio just wanted them on a ship, traveling the galaxy, and Rick Berman and Brendan Braga were adamant that they have this prequel. They introduced the Temporal War, so these futuristic things could still happen. Now, after Star Trek Enterprise, and obviously the feeling of a failure within prequels, and at the time, prequels were pretty solidly bad, or at least perceived as pretty solidly bad. But we get to 2009 with the Star Trek Kelvin timeline movies, a complete reboot of the Star Trek franchise. Or was it? Because instead of taking the normal route of just redoing it, new actors, new ship, just redoing it, they chose to involve Leonard Nimoy himself. And Leonard Nimoy came in as Spock Prime, and it sort of played a gateway for the older fans to be in the new Star Trek movie. The old fans to be into the new Star Trek movie, which was very clearly inspired by Star Wars. Now, this is a prequel as well as a multiverse story. This is a story where Kirk's father dies and Kirk's born in space. It's a story where it's sort of played off as the universe is trying to reset itself and make it back to normal. We get introduced to Kirk and Spock being kind of rebellious when they're young, although I don't know how Spock's life would be affected by this, but the Narada affected Kirk's life directly. He's a different Kirk. He's less cocky. He's more cocky and a little less serious. He's a little bit different, and it plays well with all the characters. They're all a little bit different, but all very, very familiar. Christopher Pike, for example, has a direct influence on Captain Kirk joining Starfleet that we hadn't seen before. It was even mentioned that he'd only met him once or twice back in the past from the original series. So we got new interpretations of these characters, Chris Pine as Kirk and Zachary Quinto, and what this did was update Star Trek for a modern audience. It was much more action-orientated. There was a bit of time travel in it, but it was pretty simple to follow. We had the link to the past with Leonard Nimoy, and Leonard Nimoy also giving his blessing to Zachary Quinto really helped older fans jump into this. Now, as far as we knew when this movie came out, we were under the impression it was the end of the Star Trek universe that we'd known, the Prime universe. And it was sad. I remember being quite sad about it, but I also really enjoyed the new film. Now, that's all we had for a big gap in the time. We had Star Trek Into Darkness, and then we had which was a redo in an alternate universe of sort of Khan and all of that stuff going on. And it was in my opinion, not good. Then we finally got Star Trek Beyond, which didn't do as well, but I felt was the most Star Trek of all of the Kelvin timeline films. Since then, we've just had constant rumors about a new Kelvin timeline Star Trek film, and it's just never come into it. But an announcement was made that we would be going back to the Prime timeline to about, I want to say 10 years before Captain Kirk on the USS Discovery. They showed footage of the Discovery, which was ish received. Brian Fuller and Alex Kurtzman, who had worked on those big films, were coming in. They were trying to make it sort of so that this universe could be, so this show would attract those Kelvin timeline universe people as well as the new ones. Now, it's a prequel, and why they went back to a prequel, we don't know. But I think Brian Fuller wanted to sort of establish himself a bit earlier. We had no references to Star Trek Enterprise. The show, when it came out, looked completely different. The main similarity is like a few aesthetics, but very much sort of ignore the design aesthetics of the TNG era. And we, up until that point, from the motion picture throughout the end of the TNG era, had a very, very consistent universe. Like, it was very, very thematically the same, style the same. The uniforms had a similar coda. We suddenly go to Discovery and the ships are all a bit bronzy. They're a bit more, I want to say, angular in parts. They're a bit more sort of CGI design. There's a bit more flair to the design. There's no simplicity to it. The Discovery's bridge is huge. The graphics are amazing and they look fantastic. We get our first African-American female lead. We get our first gay couple. Very progressive, ultra progressive even. There's other shows around that were similar to that, but this is the first time Star Trek had done it. And people questioned, was Star Trek Discovery in a separate timeline? And Star Trek, I think of Star Trek Discovery differently. The criticisms of Discovery was it was nothing like our old timeline. Now, if you've watched other franchises, an example being Doctor Who, the aesthetic of Doctor Who changed with every production team. And that's what happened with Discovery. But Star Trek fans, mostly being old people, didn't like that. Younger fans really, really liked that. So it was a big shift. I had a lot of fans saying that they really enjoyed season 1 and 2 of Discovery. So Discovery done an interesting thing. It started off as a prequel, but then jumped 900 years ahead and became a sequel, which took away all of its canon responsibilities, which is the information we've got from that time period from the previous shows. Got rid of it, established itself in the future in a new universe. But after Discovery, we got Star Trek Prodigy announced, we had Star Trek Lower Decks announced, and we had Star Trek Picard announced. Picard would be set after the 24th century, after Star Trek Nemesis. Lower Decks would be set the same time period. Prodigy, the same time period. All of them directly leaping on from that TNG era. Picard had TNG crew members in it. Captain Picard himself, Riker, Troy. Lower Decks had references galore and talking about it. We hadn't met our crew, but it was very reference heavy. And Prodigy started off really individual, unique, all aliens. We got our Admiral Janeway from Star Trek Voyager, and we had this beginning new for kids. Now, let's just get into the nitty-gritty of it. All of those films being set after TNG is good. That era is a little messy uniform-wise, but otherwise it's pretty well flashed out. Picard shows us a Federation still dealing with the demons of the Dominion War and sort of the darkness that came around that period of the TNG show. And Prodigy shows us the hope for the future that Starfleet gives. We get 2 seasons. We want another one. The second season was brilliant, where we get time travel and multiverses introduced on a whole new level, where we learn that Wesley can jump between these things. It's a really, honestly, Star Trek Prodigy Season 2, watch it. But getting into the thing. So this era of Star Trek, this new era, has been predominantly from this point, and it's with Discovery, Move to the Future, Picard, after the 24th century, Lower Decks, 24th century, or 24th, 25th, and Prodigy, 24th, 25th. Then we get the announcement after fan explosions at Anson Mounts and Ethan Peck's and Rebecca Romijn's performances in Star Trek Discovery Season 2, the announcement of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which was directly inspired by, and hands down, that Pike is inspired by the Pike from the 2009 Kelvin films. And when we got to Strange New Worlds, it felt like an updated version of the original show. The sets were different yet familiar. The uniforms were different yet familiar. The characters were different and familiar. Not huge references to the original series, but enough there. The Enterprise itself looks a little bit different, but still very familiar. Producers have said that it's like TOS in HD. It's a really fun way to look at things. Now, the overview of Star Trek aside, the next part we're talking about is in other franchises, and we look at Star Wars, or we look at what's another franchise they bag out, Doctor Who. All of our big franchises doing prequels and sequels, but never actually sort of continuing on our stories, having a lot of trouble maintaining their audiences when they do. Starfleet Academy continues the future story of Discovery in the 32nd century. Strange New Worlds is coming back for season 3 and 4. Lower Decks is cancelled this year, damn you. And Prodigy, we assume it's cancelled, but hopefully not. The risk being in these franchises is that yes, going back is easy. You've already got a fan base. People want to see that era. But what you do is take away or limit yourself within the show's canon. And Strange New Worlds had a really interesting way of solving this problem by basically going, the universe, time changes all the time within that universe. So that means within the Star Trek universe, all of those time travel episodes have affected the timeline now. All of the parallel universe ones haven't, as far as we know. But then we've got the Kelvin timeline, which is mentioned in Star Trek Discovery, I think season 3 or season 4. They're still around as well. We've got the mirror universe. We've got a million other universes. The multiverse, Marvel trying to create their own multiverse. And Star Trek has kind of been doing it for a while, avoiding a full-on multiverse crossover show, which I find quite interesting. The closest thing to a crossover we've really got in the TNG era was Deep Space Nine and Next Generation. The closest thing we got this era was Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds. And then kind of Voyager with Prodigy and kind of Next Generation with Picard, even though they're the same, essentially. But the tricky thing is balancing that level of nostalgia with the level of new things. Within the Star Trek universe, we know, and I want to know if you know, we know that milking the nostalgia berries is a very important thing for them while creating something new. So we have shows coming out, Starfleet Academy, of which is Discovery Era, has Discovery cast coming in. It's very much about progressing Discovery's story. Picard, people want Star Trek Legacy. I personally have no feelings about that, but people want Star Trek Legacy. They want a continuation of that story. But also not. We're also apparently getting a Star Trek 30-minute comedy series, which makes no sense. We had one. It was called Star Trek Lower Decks, unless they're doing a live-action Lower Decks, of which case I will be very happy. But the advantages of a multiverse are great. Unless you play them wrong like Marvel, where you are forcing that level of nostalgia in the place of story, which is pretty much what they do. Star Trek has never really done that. Star Trek has never really ventured into the multiverse. A whole show about the multiverse would be brilliant. Just get Wesley, send him into the multiverse, and let him see how Starfleet has become. I personally enjoy every iteration of Star Trek, from the Kelvin timeline to the sequels to the prequels. I think Star Trek Enterprise is underrated. I think Discovery deserves more respect. I think Strange New Worlds is fantastic. I think Discovery is also fantastic. Can I point that out, old people? Lower Decks is great. Prodigy Season 2 is some of the best Trek we've seen in this era. And I'm really hopeful for the future. I'm hoping, though, we get less of the prequel idea. Oh, wait, they've just announced they're doing an Origins movie. How can you have an Origins movie if you've already done the Origin movie, which is First Contact, and the Origin TV show, which is Star Trek Enterprise? What are you doing? The origin of what? The Federation? You're going to do the Romulan Earth War? Is that what you're going to do? I don't know what they're going to do. What do you think they're going to do? We get like constant rumors of films, constant changes in what they want and what is happening. And to me, I think that listening to your fans is great, but also don't listen to us. Go and make some new Trek, respecting the old Trek, while moving us forward into a new and vibrant future. I have been rambling on for a really long time. Tell me what series you want to see in the Star Trek universe. What character would you focus on, or what era would you focus on? I have been trek.trav. This has been an almost 20-minute long video, and it's going to take me forever to actually edit. But thank you, and I'll see you next time.